Mr. President, Megan Schepter, who's in our School of Nursing and comes from Baltimore, asked this question. What do you feel was your greatest accomplishment during your presidency, and what lasting effect do you feel it will have on the American people? Our students ask hard questions.
You know, I get asked that a lot, and believe it or not, I've had different feelings at different times. But, you know, I believe that we demonstrated you could have economic progress and social justice and that the government could work again. You have no idea. A lot of you can't believe this, but the level of cynicism about government when we all moved to town was unbelievable. People, a huge majority of the people had been told since President Reagan was elected that government was the problem and would always mess up a two-car parade. And so, yes, maybe our economic program was the most important thing, or maybe, you know, we cutting the welfare rolls by 58% and reducing poverty was the most important thing. One thing I'm very proud of is that we had 50% more jobs in my 8 years than in the previous 12 years, but we moved 100 times as many people out of poverty. 100 times. I'm very proud of that. But my own view is that it's like this speech I gave you. I had an overarching view of where America ought to go. And I believe we proved you could advance economic progress and social justice and be a force for peace and decency in the world, and the government could work in a way that was good for people. And I think that a feeling that we could go forward together, which was manifest in millions of different lives in millions of different ways, is probably more important than any specific thing I did. I had a vision, I had a strategy, we executed it, and it got good results. And we proved to people that politics, public life mattered, and America worked again. And I think having people believe America works is very important.
Thank you. Kate Koza, who's a sophomore and majoring in journalism and political science from Jacksonville. Because of the rise of telecommunications and internet technologies, widespread globalization is the reality of my generation. While it's certainly beneficial to bring fresh international ideas to American business, many worry that jobs will soon be outsourced at a rate that will significantly harm the career prospects of American college graduates. What advice would you give us on this subject?
Two things. First of all, we are losing even some jobs that are being outsourced that are basically higher ed jobs, college education related jobs. But the first advice I would give is study the trends. You're going to have to be more careful. You're going to have to change what you do more times during the course of a lifetime. But your education is still a big advantage. You just got to pick and choose and find things that won't be so quickly outsourced. Second thing I think you have to do is to support good economic policies, smart economic policies that are fair and decent to the poorer countries in the world, but keep America growing. Home improvement. Let me just give you one example. I met a guy the other day, just walking on the street in New York. Another thing you can do when you're not president anymore. Who told me, I've been reading about this, but I never met a real live flesh and blood person that did this, who told me that his company, under their health insurance, had just sent him to India for hip replacement surgery. Now, there are certified international hospitals for this kind of work now. Most of them that Americans use are in India and Thailand, where there are doctors that have been approved and the insurance companies pay. And so now the insurance financing tail is wagging the healthcare dog so much that this poor guy with his health insurance policy has even had to cut the doctors and the nurses out of any part of it to go all the way there. So that's what I'm saying. You need to keep this. So the first thing we need to do, if we had health care reform, that would be far less attractive, okay? Now, but the second point I want to make about the economic policies is this. No country can maintain an open economy with a high level of income in a competitive world where the Indians and the Chinese and increasingly the Vietnamese and many others, hundreds of millions of people in Latin America or everywhere else, are just as smart as we are. Right? They are, and they have a right to work their way out of poverty, and they have a right to get rich, and they have a right to take care of their children, they have a right to live their dreams. So we're going to have to work through a lot of this stuff. But if we want to continue to have an open, integrated economy that actually benefits us, then we have to have a source of good new jobs every 5 to 8 years. This may be the most important practical thing I tell you here today. Just remember that you can't keep wages rising without a source of good new jobs every 5 to 8 years. We have ignored our bird's nest on the ground here. A commitment to a clean, efficient energy future would produce millions and millions of jobs that could not be easily outsourced. Suppose, for example, if you wanted to retrofit every building on the University of Miami campus with solar reflectors, don't you imagine those jobs would be done here? And probably the university would buy panels that were made in America, designed by engineers who are here. If you decided to build the wind turbines, you could buy them from overseas, but you could get good ones made by GE and others here. And if you're looking for the proof of the pudding, I will tell you this. The two of the three economies in Europe that look most like America's, that is most sort of free market-oriented open, I believe, are Denmark, the Netherlands, and the UK. Denmark's economy has grown 50% in the last several years. You know how much its energy use has grown? And its greenhouse gas emissions have grown? 0. 50% growth with no increase in energy use or greenhouse gas emissions. None, not any, not 1 watt. Meanwhile, they generate 22% of their electricity from wind, the highest in the world. They also have great conservation. The United Kingdom, when I negotiated, I sent Al Gore and Stu Eisenstadt to negotiate the Kyoto Treaty on climate change. We had almost everybody in the Senate voted against it before I could even send it to them. They didn't even want me to send it to them. They said it's a job killer, it's going to bankrupt the economy. So when President Bush won, he believed that too. And he said, oh, this is a terrible thing, devastating the American economy. You know what the British said? We like Kyoto, but it's actually too weak. And we're going to beat our Kyoto emission targets by 25 to 50%. Guess what? Their unemployment rate's about what ours is. But unlike America, their wages are rising, median wages are rising, and inequality is declining. Why? Gordon Brown, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, put out a stunning report detailing by category the tens of thousands of jobs they created by category because they made a commitment to a clean energy future, and they believed in it so much they've come up with a second plan to build on it. So you remember that. Look at Florida, for God's sakes. I mean, if we have global warming, you know, all that work I did to recover the Everglades is going to be lost because it's all going to be underwater. And you could create a sustainable economy for first-generation immigrants without college degrees. 40% of the immigrants in America today, the Hispanic immigrants in America today who have gotten jobs in the last 5 years have gotten them in construction. 40%. If we made a serious commitment to have energy-efficient buildings, which are responsible, by the way, for 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions, buildings, and to do everything else we could do, you wouldn't have to worry about the jobs. And you wouldn't have to worry about the jobs for the college graduates either.